Hey y'all, it's Phil in Dallas again.
Hi.
We're sitting here in Espresso Americano, which is a coffee shop.
They're not paying us for that.
It's a coffee shop in Roppongi Hills that's quite comfortable.
They should, though.
We've decided to do a series answering 10 questions from a theist who has posed questions to atheists. And since Dallas and I are atheistic,
I'm not an atheist, but yeah.
we decided to see if we can answer these questions adequately. All right, so the first question is, are you a moral relativist or do you believe in absolute morality? In other words, do you believe that cultures or even individuals can define their own rules on what is moral or what is not? Or do you believe that every action has one unique, absolute, and true moral assessment? Dallas, what do you think?
I have to say that I'm a relativist in the sense that, well, first of all, we need to define what is morality. I think you and I have a slightly different interpretation of what that is, but in the end, I think that we agree that the concept itself is derived from emotion and is subjective.
Mm-hmm. So Dallas and I had this discussion previously, and we both concluded that the foundation of moral or ethical issues is emotions, and that's all there is. So to try to imbue morality with a higher degree of a higher weight than emotions, I think is erroneous. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So in that sense, I believe I'm an amoralist. I don't believe there's such a thing as morality. So to ask whether I'm a moral relativist is an improperly poised question.
And I'm a relativist only in that I believe that it is relative, in the pure sense that your decision or your base of morality is going to be different from my base of morality simply because we come from different experiences, different personalities, mm-hmm. and your emotions will sway you one direction, mine may sway me in another direction.
Right.
And at some point we do make sort of like the intellectual decision and to say, okay, well, whether or not this behavior is correct or not for us. Mm-hmm. And we do talk about utilitarianism a lot in these videos, but I think that this also has, with regards to the ethical aspect of what we term morality, mm-hmm.
Does
come into play fairly significantly there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess my question. Let me ask you a question. I can play devil's advocate here because we come from the theist background. So, if you believe that morality is defined, or even though you're an amoralist, let's just give that there is a concept of morality that we have defined to mean individual emotion mm-hmm. in the decision making process. So. Where does that emotion come from, or what determines that emotion?
Our biology, basically. Animals have emotions. Some animals have very hostile emotions, such as tigers. Other animals have very passive emotions, loving emotions, such as panda bears. Humans are somewhere in between.
Are those emotions, or are they instinct? or is emotion and instinct different?
I would say,
I mean, dogs do get sad.
Mm-hmm.
Orangutans do get upset.
Right.
They can also exhibit happiness. Mm-hmm. So we know that they do have these basic components of emotion, mm-hmm. and we also know that dogs, or other animals, can exhibit remorse as mm-hmm. well.
Right.
But we don't know if that remorse is based on a reward discipline system, or if it's really something that they feel internally and have cogitated to a degree to where they've come to recognize that what they did was wrong by way of decision, mm-hmm. as opposed to simply, oh, I'm in trouble now. Mm-hmm. right?
I think most people would agree, though, that animals do have emotions.
Yeah.
And to say that those emotions come from any other source other than biology, that would be to place a burden of proof on the person claiming that there's some other source.
Correct. So, okay, so you believe that, of course, morality is defined by emotions, or morality in the general definition of it.
Right.
And you believe that these emotions are inherent, to us as human beings, and not specific to us in our experience as.
Well, each person is different, so yes, there will be different emotions in each individual.
Well, what I mean is that the concept of emotion is not unique to the humankind.
No, I do believe animals have emotions. I think that's
Okay,
difficult to dispute.
So why do you think? From the Christian or the theist perspective, they believe that God has instilled in every man, or has written on their hearts, His law, and the things of God can be known through nature, and every man is held accountable according to this knowledge.
Why do theists believe false things?
Well, I'm just saying that this is their stance. So, for me, and here's the argument that they make.
Okay.
And they believe that you can't have anything, ultimately being relative, because they come with sort of like this logical fallacy of, in order to have anything relative, in order to have, morality, it has to be not relative, but it has to be, determined.
Theists define morality as something that must come from a
It's
moral
absolute.
lawgiver.
Yeah.
So
well, exactly.
I don't believe in a moral lawgiver, so I believe there can be no such thing as that type of morality.
Correct. And I think too is every human being and every human every culture that we know of, in people groups and systems that have been located in remote areas or whatnot, they all have different systems, and they all have different laws internally to them. Some of them are cannibals,
Right.
and sometimes cannibalism is just a part of their culture.
Right.
Sometimes cannibalism not necessarily for the purpose of tribal warfare, but also for example, they believe that if they consume their ancestors, then
Right.
they're giving them a rite of passage
Right.
into the next life or whatnot, or integrating them into, or it's just a cycle of
Right.
life. Things like this. Unfortunately, from where we come from, it's different. But a lot of societies, molestation and things like that, having intercourse with younger people, it has just been a part of culture.
Right.
Now, my question is, so why do those things change once those societies have been exposed to other moral systems?
One reason is because as resources become less limited, there's no pressure to commit such things as infanticide. There's less pressure on society to prune society in certain ways, or to control society in certain ways. So it's based on the material conditions. It's based on the environment. It's based on the material conditions. It's based on their circumstances, their particular circumstances. It's also based on history. It's based on their culture, their literature, other types of cultural influences. So, but it's all based on emotions, I feel.
Okay. I tend to think that once these civilizations are exposed to modernism, that they're also exposed to science
And rationality.
and it also is the case, and many times, throughout history, it has been the case anyway, that missionaries have gone in and spread their concept of morality based on, the absolute law or the rule of God.
Right.
But even as those cultures progress beyond these belief systems, they still retain morality to the degree that we do in the the developed world, and it's it's simply due to the fact that we understand we can go in and measure the utility of certain behavior. We can measure the effectiveness or the efficacy of certain types of I guess you could say the components of culture, and from that perspective, it's just a matter of having more exposure and more information to help them to make better decisions at that point. Because, to be honest, a lot of the reason that they behave the way they did, prior to being exposed to modernity, has a lot to do with the fact that they believed in religious systems.
Right.
So I couldn't say that a religious system has come and saved them, which is easy for them to, I guess, believe once they've come out of this really, really ridiculous religious system. But then they make that progression. I mean, Papua New Guinea is a great example.
Right.
And that's been a focus for Christian missionaries for many centuries. But the reality is, so in Papua New Guinea they did practice cannibalism. But once the missionaries came in, they did see that there was kind of a turnaround in society. There was more respect for females and things like this. They saw more equity come into society and have a larger role. But then, nowadays, Papua New Guinea is been exposed to, of course, Australia and the influences there, and they have more of I guess you could say, a modern base as opposed to this Christian base. And I think that they haven't reverted to these original practices simply because they've come away from Christianity.
Right.
And I think that I guess we've touched on this before in other videos, but simply not having a Christian foundation for morality doesn't mean that you don't have morality.
Right.
And I guess that's what this question really is trying to hit the vein of. But I think that they're framing the question in such a way that they try to play tautological games with the idea. And I just think it's to say that there are no, or that there has to be an absolute is absolutely absurd.
Right.
Yeah.
So I believe it's based on emotions, and you can see this in that the more a society, or the less isolated a society is, and the more resources it has, and the more exposure it has to science and rationality, the more there is a convergence on a given ethical position.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's a blending, averaging, or kind of an averaging of basic human emotions.
Yeah, it is an averaging. I agree, and that's utilitarianism in practice. Right. I mean, we all come together and we all decide, well, based on our history, based on our culture, and based on the things that we as a group, have determined is best for us. These are going to be the rules. Don't kill. Don't come into my into my yard and steal my stuff.
Right.
Because you don't want me doing that to you, and that's not the way that we progress as a society.
Right. So all these.